capitalism, right? At least on a global scale, right? Okay, next point are two models. I'll actually erase this. So we're going to talk about the two models of globalization. Right, two models of globalization. I'm going to talk about the optimistic and pessimistic models, and 5 steps for the optimistic model of globalization, and then I'll go through and I'll do an account of the pessimistic interpretation as well. So 5 steps, is it 5? Yeah. 5 steps of an optimistic model of globalization, the relationship between globalization and human rights. So it's going to be 5 steps, the 5 modes of interpreting the relationship. 5 steps in assessing the relationship between globalization and human rights. Alright, so in an optimistic model of globalization, in an optimistic model, the first step is the following, quote, transnational investments in a society that is not democratic and does not respect human rights. So, conceptually speaking, here's the globe, here is our transnational corporations, TNC. So, transnational corporations have lots and lots and lots and lots of capital, right? And the first point is a recognition, quote, that transnational investments will be directed as global capitalism expands in a society that is not democratic and does not respect human rights. So here's the society here, right? This society is defined by the following. This society, 1, is not democratic. It's not democratic, and 2, there are low levels of human rights recognition. RCOG. Okay, so 2 things. 1, this society, society X, is not a democratic society. First point. Next point, this society 2 has low levels of human rights recognition, meaning that human rights abuses are very high in this area. So we have transnational corporations with a lot of dollars, and what ends up happening is transnational corporations invest into this society, right? So they're going to invest money into the society, right? So transnational corporations invest money into the society. The society, prior to the investment of transnational corporations, is not a democratic society. The society also has high levels of human rights violations. There's a low levels of human rights recognitions. So, and I give you the citation from page 56 of Human Rights in the World Community. So that's step 1. Okay, so that's that. Step 2 is the following. Transnational corporations contribute to the development of a middle class. Very important. I've been discussing this quite a bit, right? So TNCs, transnational corporations, contribute to the development of a middle class. Right? Transnational corporations are going to directly contribute to the development of a middle class. And how does that work? Remember, if you were to graph this, and you were to say developed and developing, right? Developed and developing nations, and we were to look in terms of the middle class employment, right? So developed nations, developing nations, this is obviously within the 21st century, right now, right? Developed nations, developing nations, within the 21st century, assessing middle class employment, we see that roughly developed nation, middle class is still significantly larger than developing nations, but that the projections for developing nation is an increase, and the projection for the developed nation is a decrease. So that what ends up happening is, as an example, manufacturing industries, primarily, manufacturing industries that were once housed within the United States with respect to textile production, car production and such, have either been outsourced or automized. Insofar as it's been either outsourced or automized, the labor demand is high, but the supply is low. There's no need to have those jobs. Why? Because those jobs have been outsourced. Right? Those jobs have been outsourced. Those jobs have been outsourced. Insofar as those jobs have been outsourced from the developed world to the developing world as a means of investing our capital elsewhere, the middle class within the developing world will grow. Right? The argument is, within the developed world, is that the middle class will shrink given that there isn't a new supply of jobs. And I've already discussed this. That supply of jobs needs to be a 21st century new growing workforce, and it is up to both, and it's actually in the interest of global capitalists to help politicians conceptualize what this new 21st century workforce is going to look like, because they want a 21st century workforce because they're going to make them even more wealthy than they already are. So it's just really a matter of good ideas. It really is. Once the ideas are there, met with the technology available, there'll be a new boom in employment within the developed world, but it won't be like it was before. So the first point to recognize in step two is that transnational corporations contribute to the development of the middle class. Primarily, they're contributing to the development of a middle class in a society that is not democratic and does not respect human rights. So that's two. Number three, the growth of the middle class leads to the growth of the middle class leads to an increasingly educated population. The growth of the middle class leads to an increasingly educated population. What ends up happening is that capital investment into the middle class, and the creation of the developing middle class within, let's say, a developing nation, results in more money, and that money affords individuals more opportunities. Those opportunities then manifest in building more schools and better infrastructure, better social services, and so on. The consequence of that, obviously, is that their offspring, their children, will have exceedingly better education than they themselves had. Educational opportunities are afforded by an increased standard of living. I mean, that's just obvious, right? So step three is that the growing middle class is going to lead directly to a more educated population. Obviously, we're talking generationally, right? So we're not talking about sort of quick investment. This is, on the part of transnational corporations, a long-term investment in a developing nation, right? So that increase money and increase standards of living will result in an increasingly educated population. Right? Increased money and increased standards of living is going to result in an increasingly educated population. Right? So the population will be increasingly educated. This is really sort of a very long syllogism that we're following. So that's number three. Number four, an educated population will become less willing to live in will become less. I actually need to find this quote because I think I quoted it wrong. An educated population will become less willing to live in democratic. Yeah, I think I quoted it wrong. Let me look in the book. 56, page 56.